Hi again. Have you ever been in the kitchen and helped your family member to cook or bake something yummy? I'm sure you have. Cooking and baking is a lot of fun, and it's one of my favorite hobbies. Today we're going to be learning about what a recipe is. And here we have a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. In a recipe, we have ingredients and instructions that we have to follow. And I'm sure that when you cooked with your family members at home, they were following a recipe that they found somewhere or that they remembered in their mind. I have lots of recipes memorized in my mind that I use to cook at home and to bake. But sometimes there's some I can't remember, and so we have to look at recipes to help us create those things we've made before that we love to eat so much. Ingredients are the items that we have to put together or gather in our kitchen to begin preparing our recipe. And the instructions are the steps that we need to follow to make whatever it is we're trying to cook or bake. Let's look at the ingredients for our chocolate chip cookies. It says 1 egg beaten. That means we need 1 egg and we need to mix it up in a bowl before we start using it in our recipe. Next we have 1/2 cup of butter softened. Now are we going to take the butter right out of the fridge and use it just like that? No. The recipe says it needs to be softened, and that means we need to let it sit out so that it'll become soft, or stick it in the microwave for a few seconds to get it ready to mix. Next we have 1 package of Betty Crocker chocolate chip cookie mix, which we can buy at the grocery store. And last we have 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips, because we want to add extra chocolate chips to our cookies. Now let's look at the instructions. Number 1 says, preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Number 2, mix the egg, butter, and cookie mix in a bowl. Number 3, add the chocolate chips and stir them into the dough. Number 4, make small balls with the dough and place them on a cookie sheet. Number 5, bake the dough for 12 minutes in the oven. And the last step, number 6, let the cookies cool and then eat them. That's my favorite step. Now let's look in the middle at our pictures. Each of these pictures shows us what that step should look like. Number 1 shows the oven being preheated to 350 degrees. Number 2 shows the first 3 ingredients being mixed, the egg, the butter, and the cookie mix. Number 3 shows us adding the chocolate chips, the extra chocolate chips in this case. Number 4 shows us making the little cookie dough balls and placing them on the tray. Number 5 shows us placing the cookies in the oven to bake. And number 6 shows the cookies cooling down and getting ready for us to eat them. And this is what a recipe includes: ingredients, the things that we need, and instructions, the steps that we take to make them. In today's story, we're going to be learning about bread and all of the steps that go into sowing the seeds for the wheat, harvesting the wheat, and putting the wheat through all the process it needs to go through in order to start baking bread, or well, making wheat and then baking the bread. I almost skipped a step. So let's go to our story now and let's read it together. Our story this week is called Bread Comes to Life, A Garden of Wheat and a Loaf to Eat, by George Levinson, and photography by Shmuel Thaler. Bread is the food we eat every day. So many kinds, so many ways. White bread, black bread, small bread, tall bread, thin bread, twin bread, dinner rolls, bread with holes, hard, day-old, tough bread. Bread is toast. Bread is crumbs. Bread is pizza. Bread is buns. How is bread made? Where is it from? This baker makes his bread from scratch by sowing wheat in his backyard patch. Soon those seeds send down roots and sprout into shoots of bright green grass. The days pass, and that grass grows into sturdy blades, tall and straight, finely made, with budding heads and bristly hair, gently waving in the air. When the crop is ripe and old, the tops are bowed and streaked with gold, and every head of wheat contains many tiny finished grains. Time to cut the golden field, gather up the backyard yield, stack up piles of sun-dried stalks, rub them in a threshing box. It's the simple, old-time miller's craft of separating wheat from chaff. What's left are seeds, a hefty load, many times the number sowed, and each new grain of harvest wheat looks just like a loaf to eat. Now is the hour to grind those grains into whole wheat flour. With simple tools and easy rules, it's on with the show to make up some dough and bring fresh bread to life. Yeast, honey, wheat, flour, salt, oil, and muscle power. Dump it, thump it, dust it, knead it, squash it, stretch it, toss it. Set it aside to rest and rise. It grows and grows to twice the size. Punch it down, give it some shape, let it rise again, put it in to bake. Slice it fresh, it's better than cake. Whatever the shape it finally takes, wherever the place it finally bakes, every day we are blessed with a mountain of bread. It's the staff of life. May all be fed. And that's the end of our story. Now, our story had lots of new vocabulary words that we haven't actually heard before. And like with our other stories, I'd like to go over those with you. So let's take a look at some of the new words we heard today. Here's our vocabulary list. Read the words with me as I read them out loud. I will say them first, and you say them after me. Roll. From scratch. Sowing. Sprout. Shoots. Bristly. Ripe. Bowed. Yield. Stalks. Threshing. Miller. Chaff. Knead. Let's take a look at each one of these words. The word roll, I'm sure you've heard before, but when we think of roll, we think of something rolling around on the ground, right? Or maybe you rolling over or tumbling on the ground. But that's not the type of roll they were talking about in this story. In this story, they were talking about dinner rolls, like this picture here. Dinner rolls are small little buns that we bake in the oven to eat with our meals. I'm sure you've seen those before, maybe at Pollo Tropical or at other restaurants where you've eaten, right? I know I have. Now we have two words here. And the reason that I put the word from in front of scratch is because when we hear of the word scratch, we think of scratching ourselves if we're itching, right? Well, in this case, from scratch means that something is made from its simplest form. That means a recipe like the one we talked about, where we gather different ingredients like sugar or flour or cornstarch or maybe salt, sugar, and other ingredients, and we put them together from scratch. So we're baking something from the simplest ingredients. We're not using anything that's already been mixed. And I'll tell you a little secret. The recipe that we were talking about at the beginning about the chocolate chip cookies, that was not from scratch. Do you know why? Because the chocolate chip mix already comes mixed, and that is not from scratch. inside of that little pouch that you buy at the grocery store are several different ingredients that have already been mixed before being put inside the pouch. So unless you are the one that gathers all of the ingredients by yourself without using a pouch that's already mixed before, then it's not from scratch. It's partly from scratch. Our next word is sowing. And sowing is the same as planting. If you look at this picture here, we see a little hand placing seeds in the soil. This is called sowing. This is when you plant the seeds in the soil to grow new plants. Sprout is actually a verb or an action word, and that is what the seeds do. They sprout, they grow out of the ground once they've had enough sunlight and water to start growing. And shoots are the first little stems that grow out of the dirt, out of the soil, when the plant starts to grow for the first time. We can also say that leaves sprout or grow out of the tops of the shoots. Next we have the word bristly. And bristly means something like the wheat here. Look at my pointer on the screen. You see how the wheat has all those pointy little hairs sticking out of it? You can see it in the rest of the picture too. Those are bristles. And just like a hairbrush that you run through your hair, the wheat has bristles at the top. So bristles are like pointy little hairs on something. Next we have the word ripe. Take a look at this picture of a banana. It has lots of sections that look different. This banana explains that when it is green, it is underripe. It's not ready to eat. When it is a little bit yellow, it's barely ripe. You probably could eat it, but it wouldn't taste that great. Now in the middle, right here, where it's like a deep yellow color and starts to have some little brown marks, that's when it's ripe. That's when it tastes the most delicious and when you should eat it. Then we have very ripe, which is when it has lots of spots, and overripe, when it starts to get black. So ripe means when a fruit or vegetable is just right and ready to eat. It's at its best. Next we have the word bowed, and bowed is when something bends. If you look up here where I'm pointing, you'll see that the wheat bends over. Okay, it's so tall and the top part is so soft that it bows over. That is what the word bow means. The next word is yield. And if you remember in our recipe card, at the beginning, there was something at the bottom which, now that I think about it, we didn't read. Let's go back to our recipe card quickly and take a look. Here's our recipe card, and right down here it says yields 24 small cookies or 12 large cookies. That means that this recipe makes, okay, the word yields means to make or produce something. It will produce 24 small cookies or 12 large cookies. And that's what the word yield means. Let's go back to our vocabulary words. Next we have the word stalks. And stalks are, look right here in the picture of the wheat, the long, hard stems that are tall, very tall, and hold the wheat at the very top. There are many, many plants that have stalks and that grow very tall with thin stems. Threshing is the process of removing the grain from the chaff. It says here, what is threshing? The wheat looks like this, but when they thresh it, they remove the grain, which are these little seeds here. Miller is a person that works at a mill or a place where they thresh the wheat. So the miller is the one who does the work of threshing the wheat. The chaff are the leftover little shells, like you see in this picture here. These little shells held the wheat seeds inside, and during threshing, they separate the seed from the chaff. They remove the chaff, and this ends up being garbage. And our last word is knead, and that's what these hands are doing here. To knead the dough is to massage it. You push it down, you stretch it, you fold it over, and you push it down again. And you do that over and over to develop the dough. Then you put the dough in a bowl and you let it rise. And the dough grows to twice its size. Remember, that's what the story said. That's what knead means, to massage the dough and get it ready for baking. Now that we're done with our vocabulary words and our story, I would like for you to go to Seesaw and do your activity for today. In your activity, you're going to have to record yourself and tell me something that you have helped to make at home with your family. It could be cookies or brownies, or maybe you prepared something for dinner like steak, or you helped to make rice. Tell me about what you made and tell me the steps that you took to make it. Ask your parents to help you remember some of the steps. You don't have to tell me all of the steps, and you don't have to tell me the ingredients or the other parts of the recipe. Just tell me what it was you did to help. I hope you have enjoyed our story today, and I hope that you do well on your activity. So let's go to Seesaw now and show me what you've learned. See you next time.